Don't you agree that these watercolors look absolutely beautiful at first glance? After I had seen this all over social media, I finally bought this watercolor set a while ago, and I really wanted to like it, but unfortunately I absolutely hated it. Let's just pause here for a second, because here I went into excruciating detail about why these paints didn't work for me last time, and in order to keep this intro short, I'll just explain this to you as we go along. I have an art piece in mind that will hopefully work with these, and maybe by the end of this I can say confidently that they work well for certain art styles at least. So here we have the paints, and I'm using a Hahnemühle paper which has a little bit of texture but not too much. So I was hopeful that it would work well with these. And I just sketched a little bit of a very simplified landscape on here with a very light hand. I mean, I used a rather soft graphite pencil, so it still picks up on camera. Whenever I do a sketch, I don't know whether I should keep it light so that it works for me, or whether I should do it darker so you can see it. But here I just used a soft pencil so you can see it. And then I used a kneaded eraser and conveniently knocked over my water jar, which was completely and totally planned, obviously. I just lightened up the sketch a little bit, and then I went into the painting process. And what I was explaining in the intro, but it was just too long and too boring to watch. Basically, this paint set is called the Art Nouveau set. So Art Nouveau is an art style which I find very pleasing to look at, honestly. And when I first got these, I wanted to try the Art Nouveau style. By the way, I'll link the video where I tried that in the description box, so just in case you want to check it out, you can. But the issue was that these paints, especially the lighter colors, are semi-opaque. So if you do line art first and then you paint over top of that, then they will show up in this chalky way on top of the fine liner, which happens with opaque watercolors. That is to be expected. And in order to get around this, I wanted to do the line art afterwards. But because these are so glossy, you can kind of see it even on the palette right here on the right side. They're super glossy and they dry like that on the paper as well. If you look at the finished art piece, it will be very shimmery. So you can kind of see that almost like a plastic film. And that for that reason, the fine liners don't stick on top of them either. So basically, you can't really do line art with fine liners with these. But the Art Nouveau style really depends on dark lines that are sort of graphic looking, if you know what I mean. And so the Art Nouveau style didn't work for these, ironically. And the next time then when I tried them, I thought these are so similar to gouache, and I know gouache, like I've used it so much, so I'll just use this similar to how I would use gouache. But then it looked so patchy and it just didn't dry the way that I wanted it, because these are in fact not gouache. Even though they're a little bit opaque, they aren't fully, and they also don't dry super flat. Like if you want to do flat and graphic shapes, then I would recommend using gouache instead and not these. So my thinking here with this piece was, let's just ditch the line art altogether. I mean, you could, and I've tried that, you could use very soft colored pencils, for example, for line art, like Prismacolor colored pencils, or maybe Caran d'Ache Luminance colored pencils, like really soft ones. They do work on top of these. So that is something that you can use if you absolutely want to do line art. But for this today, I decided to just ditch the line art altogether, try a style that works without it. And I went into this and I purposefully made it look a little bit patchy. So I kind of worked with them in this way where you can see all of these blooming effects. I did tone them down a little bit afterwards so it's not too overwhelming. In the tree and in the pot you can see there's a lot of these sort of blotches, and I did remove them a little bit so it's not too much, but I left it a little bit as well, so I kind of played with that. I wanted to use these watercolors in a way for them to actually work and make sense. And because I have now gotten a little bit of experience with them and I know the limitations of these, I thought I'll just do that. I was pondering whether I wanted to do more of an impressionistic art style, which may or may not work with these. I sort of went for this, which is kind of an in-between of more of a playful art style, but also something that is a little bit more graphic, sort of almost vector style art, but it still has this playful nature with all of these little blotches and the textures. And I played around with those textures and I purposefully let them bloom. So I combined a lot of colors, I did a lot of gradients, and I did them in this sort of messy watercolory style. You can kind of see what I mean. It's a little bit hard to explain, and I don't know if there's any style name for the style that I used here. Let me know in the comments if you have any ideas what I could call this sort of style that I used here. But at this point, I already knew that this was working so much better than the last attempts that I did with these paints. I have to honestly admit that I really enjoyed this art piece. And I am so grateful that I immediately got it with this one. So this was the first try. This time I didn't do like 6 versions of this and I'm showing you the 6th or something. This is the one version that I tried with a different approach and it actually worked. And I really like the fact that I thought about the composition a bit at first, and I just used these to their strengths. They really bloom, some of the colors granulate. So if you're the type of artist who wants to have really smooth layers and you don't like the blooming effect, then I don't know if these will work because I think they're really hard to use in really flat shapes. It might depend a little bit on paper. I found that this paper worked really well for this specific style that I had here. The style does have some finer details, but it's not extreme. So I was still playing with all of these blooming effects, not fully 100% controlling the paints in every section, but I did feel like I was mostly in control of the paints. So it was a good typical watercolor experience where you let the watercolors do some of the work for you, but you're still mostly in control. So I think I got it this time. I think this I would count this as sort of a redemption because that was, I think, the first piece with these that I really enjoyed, where I can say I didn't have to fight the material. I was actually having fun with it. And I was getting into the flow and all of that. So if I decide to use these again, and I definitely might, then this is definitely a style that I can go for in the future. And if you own paints like these, I definitely encourage you to maybe try them again if you have struggled like me in the past with them. These paints are definitely not made for every single art style, and I understand why people say that they're not the most beginner-friendly paints out there, because they just perform differently than a lot of other watercolors. But if you know how to use them, then they might be amazing and you might have a fun time with them. But there is definitely a learning curve involved with these. and I definitely noticed that learning curve because this took me several tries in total. Like in the past, I've used these a few times, and now that a bit of time has passed, finally I seem to have cracked the code on these, and I created something that I actually enjoy. So, do I now recommend these paints? I don't know. It really depends. If you already have a lot of watercolors and you're looking for something fun that's different, maybe these could be for you. If you liked this video, then please subscribe to my channel and check out this video next.